1908, the Pennhurst State School and Hospital was opened. Its official name was the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. It was built on a massive campus, a self-contained world of red brick and slate roofs, designed to house those that society had deemed unfit to exist alongside them. It was, in effect, a dumping ground. If you were an orphan, an immigrant who didn't speak the language, a child with physical disabilities, or simply deemed difficult, you could be sent to Pennhurst. The asylum's population swelled far beyond its capacity. By the 1960s, it was a living nightmare. In 1968, a young reporter named Bill Baldini managed to get his cameras inside for a 5-part television exposé called "Suffer the Little Children." The footage he captured shocked the nation. He filmed adult patients, many with the minds of children, left naked in overcrowded day rooms. He filmed children rocking back and forth in metal cribs, their only human contact being the cold steel bars. He filmed a doctor who admitted on camera that he was so overworked he could do nothing but medicate his patients into a stupor. Patients were malnourished, left in their own filth for days, restrained to benches, and subjected to a culture of routine, casual violence. The institution was finally and forcibly shut down in 1987, but the suffering, the rage, and the sorrow that had soaked into the very walls for 80 years, it never left. Today, the building is a museum, a historical site, and a paranormal hotspot. Staff report slamming doors, disembodied footsteps, and the sounds of children playing and crying in the empty, decaying halls. One of the most active buildings is the Mayflower Hall, where the spirits of children are said to wander, and where something much, much darker is said to guard them. This is the true story from an investigator who went in looking for ghosts and found something that wanted to follow him home. I have one rule when I go ghost hunting. The second I hear a kid laugh, I'm out. You can mess with demons, shadow people, angry poltergeists. I don't care. That's a different kind of energy. It's an adult, primal anger. But a kid, a child's spirit is something else. It's not an echo. It's an invitation. It's a vulnerability. And at Pennhurst, the entire sprawling campus is one giant, open invitation. My name is Jake, and I run a small paranormal investigation team. We're not ghost hunters. We're more like trauma documentarians. We try to capture the residual energy of a place. Our team was 3 people: me, the pragmatist with the thermal camera, Mike, our tech guy who lived for a clean EVP, and Sarah, our medium, who was the real reason we ever captured anything. She was a psychic lightning rod. We'd been trying to get an overnight lockdown at Pennhurst for years. When we finally got the green light, the weight of it hit us. This wasn't a haunted jail or a spooky old hotel. This was a place of profound, documented human suffering. We arrived just as the sun was setting, casting the massive red brick Mayflower Hall in a deep, bloody light. The air was cold, and it smelled like rust, wet plaster, and something vaguely chemical, like an old industrial cleaning agent that had failed to do its job. "Okay," Mike said, pulling Pelican cases from the van. "Base camp in the main hall. We'll run static cams on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and in the tunnels. I want audio recorders in all the hot rooms. Jake, you and Sarah do the first sweep." We set up our base camp in the main entry hall. The first thing you notice are the handprints. They're everywhere. Small, child-sized handprints in the thick layers of dust on the walls. But here's the part that gets you. They're too high up, like 7 or 8 feet off the floor, as if a child was being held aloft or as if something was pretending to be a child. I chose to ignore that. "We'll start on 3, I said. "Children's ward. Let's get the worst of it over with. The three of us walked up the wide, decaying staircase. The silence in that building is heavy. It's not an absence of sound. It's the presence of silence. Every footstep, every breath, every crackle of the walkie-talkie felt like a sacrilege. The third-floor children's ward is a graveyard. A long, dark hallway lined with rooms filled with rusted metal bed frames, many of them child-sized, bolted to the floor. Broken toys are scattered everywhere. A one-eyed teddy bear here, a three-wheeled tricycle there. "They're here," Sarah whispered, her eyes closed. She was standing in the middle of the hallway, her arms crossed tight. "They're all around us. They're curious and scared." "Mike, you getting this?" I whispered into my walkie. "Got you," his voice crackled in my ear. "Static cams are rolling." "I'm setting up the spirit box now. Ask her to make them do something." "Sarah," I said gently, "can you ask them to make a sound? To let us know they're here?" Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath. "Hi, sweeties. My name is Sarah. We're just here to visit. We're not here to hurt you. If you want to play, can you make a noise for my friend Mike?" The hallway was dead silent. I remember just staring at that one-eyed teddy bear on the floor, feeling like a vulture. We were profiting from their pain. And then, from the room at the far end of the hall, a single red rubber ball rolled out. It wasn't a fast roll. It was slow, hesitant. It rolled out of the darkness, bounced once on the uneven, warped floorboards, and came to a perfect stop right between my feet. I stopped breathing. My blood went ice cold. "Mike," I said into my radio, my voice shaking so hard I could barely speak. "Did you see that? Please tell me you saw that." "I saw it," he replied, his voice strained and high. "Jake, look at your thermal camera. Look at the doorway." I was filming on a thermal imager. I'd been so focused on the ball that I hadn't even looked through the viewfinder. I lowered it from my eye and looked at the small screen. The doorway the ball had come from was a cold, blue rectangle. But on the door frame, about 3 feet off the ground, was a small handprint. It was bright white, glowing with residual heat. As I watched, it faded, from white to yellow to red to purple, and then it was gone. It had been pressed there just seconds before. "It's a little boy," Sarah whispered, a small smile on her face. "He's playful. He wants to know if you'll throw it back." I don't think I can," I stammered. "It's okay," she said. But then her smile faded. Her face went pale. "Oh, wait. No, he's not alone." The temperature in the hallway dropped. It wasn't a gradual cold. It was like a door opening to a walk-in freezer. A blast of frigid air washed over us, so cold it made my teeth ache. "What is it?" I asked. "There's an adult," Sarah said, her voice now tight with fear. "A man. He's angry. He's in that room. He's yelling at the boy to get back inside. He's a doctor, or an attendant. He's wearing white. Oh God, he's cruel. He's so cruel." From inside the room, we heard a sudden violent crash. It sounded like one of the metal bed frames being thrown against the wall. "Let's get out of this hallway," I said, my voice cracking. "Now." We backed away slowly, then turned and half-jogged back to the stairwell. "What the hell was that?" I asked, my heart hammering. "It was the man," Sarah said, rubbing her arms. "He's guarding them. Or guarding them. He doesn't want them talking to us. He doesn't want them playing." "Okay," Mike's voice crackled over the radio. "I'm picking up a massive EMF spike on the 3rd floor, right where you guys were. But I'm also getting something weird in the tunnels. The recorder I left in the shower room is picking up audio. You guys need to hear this." We made our way down to the ground floor and then descended a set of stone steps into the infamous underground tunnels. The air changed instantly. It was no longer just damp and cold. It was wet. The walls were sweating, and the smell was overwhelming. It was metallic, like old pennies and spoiled meat. "This is where they say the rituals happened," Mike said, meeting us at the junction. The tunnels were a maze, branching off into total darkness. He led us to a large, tiled room that must have been a communal shower. "I left a recorder on this bench," he said, pointing to a concrete slab. "It's been running for an hour. Listen to this." He rewound the digital recorder and hit play. At first it was just silence, then a faint drip, drip, drip of water. "This is Mike, 8:14 p.m., recorder test." More silence, and then a whisper, a low, guttural, angry whisper. It was too distorted to make out the words. "It's just static," I said. "Wait," Sarah said, holding up a hand. Mike kept playing it. The whispering went on for about 30 seconds, and then it stopped, replaced by a new sound. A child, crying. A terrified, sobbing wail that echoed as if from a great distance. "He's here," Sarah whispered. "The man. He followed us." "Okay," I said. "Let's do a live session. Let's see if we can talk to him." This was a mistake. Mike set up the spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies, which spirits can supposedly use to form words. He turned it on. The sharp, rhythmic shh of the static filled the shower room. "Is anyone here with us?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud. The static hissed. "Shh, here, pain." "Who is here?" Sarah asked. "Shh, get out." The voice that came through on those two words was not a radio fragment. It was a clear, guttural male voice, so loud and violent it made us all physically jump back. The spirit box's speaker crackled and popped from the force of it. "Who are you?" I demanded, pointing my thermal camera at the dark corner the voice had seemed to come from. The static returned, chaotic and angry, and then, underneath it, a new voice, a high-pitched, terrified child's voice. "He's mad." "Who's mad?" Sarah asked, stepping forward. Dr. Hertz." "The doctor is here," Sarah said. "Is he the one who's mad?" The spirit box went completely silent. The scanning stopped, and then, from the hallway behind us, we heard it. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a sound on a box. It was the sound of heavy, angry footsteps. A man's boots slamming on the concrete coming toward us. Fast. Thud, 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 thud. "He's in the hall," Mike yelled. We ran. We didn't even think. We scrambled out of the shower room, all three of us trying to get through the doorway at once. We ran down the pitch-black tunnel, our flashlight beams bouncing wildly off the wet walls. The footsteps were right behind us, impossibly loud, echoing in the confined space. "Don't run!" a voice boomed, seemingly from everywhere at once. The same "get out" voice from the spirit box. We burst through the stairwell door, slamming it shut behind us, and scrambled up the steps, not stopping until we were back in the Mayflower Hall, our safe base camp. We collapsed against the wall, gasping for air, our hearts exploding in our chests. "Okay," Mike said between breaths. "Okay. That was not a kid. That was aggressive. That was territorial." "It was the man," Sarah whispered, her face pale and slick with sweat. "He's here. He's guarding them. He thinks we're trying to take them. He followed us from the 3rd floor." "That's it," I said. "We're done. This isn't a game. We're packing up." We started breaking down the cameras, pulling tripods, unplugging batteries. We were all on edge, our flashlights trained on the dark stairwell we'd just come from, terrified that the door at the bottom would fly open. We worked in silence, the only sound our own movements and the click of latches on the pelican cases. And that's when I heard it. From the top of the other staircase, the main grand staircase leading to the second floor, a little girl, humming. I froze. "Don't move," I whispered. Mike and Sarah stopped. We all stood there in the dark, listening. The humming was clear as day, a simple descending 6-note lullaby. Hum, 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 hum. It was beautiful and heartbreakingly sad, and it was getting closer. It was coming down the stairs. "Mike," I whispered. "Camera." He had his main camera pointed up at the landing. I had my thermal. We saw nothing. No heat signature, no shape in the dark. But the humming was right in front of us now. It had reached the bottom of the stairs and was in the main hall with us, maybe 10 feet away. Hum, 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 hum. The sound was so clear, so present, that I could feel the vibration of it in my chest. And then, the whisper. The same child's voice from the spirit box. But it wasn't from the box. It was in the air, right next to my ear. "Can I come home?" A cold spot washed over me, so intense and so sudden it made me gasp. It wasn't a draft. It was a physical, moving presence. It felt like I'd been dunked in a tank of ice water. It passed through me, from my left shoulder to my right, and then it moved toward the front door. And then it was gone. The humming stopped. The cold vanished. The building was dead silent, more silent than before. "Go," I said. "Go, go, go." We grabbed our cases. We didn't bother to be careful. We ran out the front door, threw the gear in the van, and peeled out of the parking lot. We didn't talk the whole way back. We just drove, the silence in the van as heavy as the silence in the asylum. I got home around 4 a.m. I didn't even take my shoes off. I collapsed on my bed and was instantly asleep. When I woke up, it was almost noon. The sun was streaming through my window. It all felt like a bad dream. I sat up, rubbed my face, and my foot hit something. I looked down. Sitting in the middle of my bedroom floor was a single red rubber ball. It was faded, a little cracked, and covered in gray, plaster-like dust. I don't own a dog. I don't have kids. And I live alone. I had locked my apartment door when I came in. That was 2 years ago. I still have the ball. I keep it in a glass case on my mantelpiece. Sometimes late at night I hear a little girl humming from the guest room. That simple 6-note lullaby. And on the nights when she hums, I know I'm safe, because I also hear the other one. On those same nights, I'll hear heavy, angry footsteps patrolling the hallway outside my bedroom. I'll hear the doctor. I'll hear a deep, guttural voice whispering, "Get out." And then I'll hear the sound of a heavy door slamming shut. I brought them both home, the little girl and her monstrous guardian, and he's still protecting her. He's just decided that my guest room is her new ward, and that the thing he has to protect her from is whatever else I brought home that night from Pennhurst. In the early 20th century, a plague descended on Louisville, Kentucky. They called it the White Death, an epidemic of tuberculosis that ravaged the population. To quarantine the sick and dying, the city built a massive, state-of-the-art sanatorium on a high, isolated hill. They called it Waverly Hills. It was less a hospital and more a place of last resort. It's estimated that over 6,000 people died within its walls. The treatments were often as brutal as the disease: experimental surgeries, collapsing lungs, and even the removal of ribs to give the lungs more room to expand. The building is famous for its hauntings, room 502, where a nurse, distraught and pregnant, allegedly took her own life. The solarium, where the spirits of children, including a boy named Timmy, are still heard playing. But the most famous and feared feature of Waverly Hills is a 500-foot underground tunnel known as the Body Chute. To keep morale high, staff wouldn't wheel the dead out the front door in view of the other patients. Instead, they secretly lowered them into this dark, concrete tunnel, which sloped down the hill to a waiting hearse at the bottom. It was a conveyor belt for the dead. Today, visitors report hearing disembodied voices, heavy footsteps, and the sound of slamming doors. But in the chute, they report something far worse. They report being touched, held, and seeing a solid 7-foot-tall shadow that doesn't just haunt the tunnel, it hunts it. This is the true story of a paranormal investigator who learned that what goes down doesn't always stay down. I've been investigating for 10 years. My name is Chloe. You get jaded in this field. You get used to the cold spots. You get used to the orb photos. You even get used to the disembodied whispers on a recorder. You explain 99% of it away as old pipes, wind, or an overactive imagination. You can't explain away the Body Chute at Waverly Hills. I was there with a small TV crew, filming a segment for a local paranormal show. It was me, our host Kevin, and our sound guy Ben. Kevin was the classic host, all bravado, perfectly messy hair, always talking to the camera like he was about to fight a demon. Ben and I were the skeptics. We were there to get clean audio and steady shots. We arrived for our overnight lockdown just before 11 p.m. The building is a monster. It's a massive Gothic beast of brick and stone, looming over you on that hill. It doesn't look like a hospital. It looks like a fortress built to keep something in. We started on the 4th floor, in the solarium. The legend is that the child patients were kept up here for fresh air treatment. It's also where people report seeing the ghost of a little boy named Timmy playing with a leather ball. Kevin, of course, brought a ball. He set his camera on a tripod, turned on the night vision, and rolled a bright red kickball into the middle of the empty, glass-enclosed room. "Timmy!" he boomed, his host voice on. "We're here to visit. We brought you a new ball. If you're here, Timmy, roll the ball back." We waited, the three of us standing in the dark, watching a red ball. I felt like an idiot. For 10 minutes, nothing. Just the sound of the wind whistling through the broken-out windows. "Maybe he's shy," Kevin said, his bravado fading. He was clearly annoyed the spirits weren't performing for his A-roll. "Or maybe," I said, "he's a story, Kevin. Let's move on." "Fine," he snapped. "Let's go to 502. Room 502 is where the nurse allegedly died. It's a small, grim room. We set up an EMF detector and a recorder. The EMF detector chirped a few times, but it was inconsistent. It was probably picking up the electrical storm that was brewing outside. "This is dead," Ben said, checking his audio levels. "I've got nothing but wind noise and you two whispering." Kevin was visibly frustrated. He was losing the epic content he'd promised the network. "Forget this," he said, ripping his microphone off his shirt. "If we want a reaction, we have to go to the one place that always performs. We're going to the chute." The energy in the group shifted. I felt a pit open in my stomach. Ben, who had been joking all night, went quiet. "Kevin, maybe we should just stick to the main floors," I suggested. "No," he said, his eyes bright with a bad idea. "We're going to the Body Chute, and we're going to broadcast from the bottom of it. That's the shot." The chute is just a long concrete tunnel sloping down into perfect absolute blackness. It's not part of the normal tour. You have to unlock a heavy, groaning steel door to even get to the entrance. The air that hits you from it is wrong. It's cold, but it's a wet, cellar cold. It smells like damp earth, ozone, and something metallic, like rust. "This is it," Kevin said, his host voice back on as he shouldered his camera. "Thousands of bodies pass through this tunnel. The energy here is overwhelming. We're going to be the first team to do a live feed investigation from the bottom." "Kevin, there's no signal down there," Ben said, holding up his phone. "We can't get a feed out." "We will," Kevin said, already starting down the slope. "Just follow me." Ben and I looked at each other. This was stupid, and it was dangerous. The slope was steep, slick with moisture, and plunged into total darkness. Our flashlights just got eaten. The beams didn't reflect off anything. They just stopped, as if the darkness was a solid wall. We followed him. Every step was a careful, sliding movement. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water seeping through the concrete ceiling and the echo of our own footsteps. We got about halfway down, maybe 250 feet, and the air changed. It got heavier. It felt like my chest was being compressed. "Stop," I said. "I can't breathe right." "It's just the air pressure," Kevin said, not even turning around. "No, man," Ben said, his voice shaky. "She's right. It feels thick. And that smell, God, what is that smell?" The metallic rust smell was gone. It was replaced by something else. A thick, coppery, sweet and sour smell. The smell of old, dried blood. "We're close," Kevin whispered, more excited than scared. He pointed his camera down. "Look, the bottom." The tunnel flattened out at the bottom, opening into a small, square concrete room. This was where they would have loaded the bodies onto the hearse. The walls were stained with something, dark patches that had soaked into the stone. "Okay," Kevin said, setting up a battery-powered lantern. "Let's do this. Ben, get your audio. Chloe, get the spirit box." I turned on the spirit box. The sharp, scanning static was a comfort for a second. Shh, pain, cold. "Is there anyone here with us?" I asked, my voice sounding small in the oppressive space. The static just hissed. "Were you a patient here? Did you come through this tunnel?" "Shh, help me." The voice was clear, a woman's, and it was terrified. "Who are you?" I asked. "How can we help you?" The static crackled, and then a new sound came through. It wasn't a word. It was a groan, a low, agonized, guttural sound, like a man in terrible, crushing pain. It lasted 3 full seconds, so loud it distorted the speaker before being cut off by the static. We all looked at each other. "That was not the radio," Ben said, his face pale in the lantern light. And then the dripping stopped. The tunnel went completely, profoundly silent. So silent my ears started to ring. "What was that?" I whispered. "Shh," Kevin said, pointing his camera back up the dark, sloping tunnel we had just walked down. From the top of the chute, in the darkness, we heard a noise. A heavy, wet thud. It was the exact sound of a 200-pound sack of wet laundry being dropped on a concrete floor. We all froze. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "It's just the building settling," Kevin said, but his voice was trembling. "No," Ben said, backing against the wall. It's not settling." Another sound, a scrape, a long, slow shh sound, like something heavy and wet being dragged down the concrete slope toward us. "No," Ben said. "No, I'm not doing this. Kevin, we have to go." Shh. It was getting closer. It was a dragging sound, followed by a wet, sloppy thump, like it was moving in intervals. Scrape, thump, scrape, thump. "It's coming down the chute," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Kevin, light it up." Kevin aimed his camera's main light up the tunnel. The powerful beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the wet walls, the slick floor, and it. It was not a person. It was a large, black, human-shaped mass, glistening wetly in the light. It was on the ground, maybe 50 feet up the slope, and it was pulling itself down with its arms. It looked like a body bag, but it was moving on its own. It had no face, no features, just a lumpy, shifting shape, like a bag of wet cement trying to crawl. As we watched, it stopped. It seemed to feel the light on it. It slowly, horribly, began to rise. It unfolded itself, standing up to a height of over 7 feet, completely blocking the tunnel. It was a shadow, but it had weight. It was solid. Kevin screamed. It wasn't a manly scream. It was a high-pitched, terrified shriek. The moment he screamed, the figure lunged. It didn't run. It didn't slide. It moved from 50 feet away to 10 feet away in a single, impossible instant. We fell over each other, scrambling back. Ben hit the lantern, and the room plunged into darkness, lit only by our 3 panicked flashlight beams. "The door! The other door!" Kevin yelled. At the back of the loading room was another steel door, the one that led to the outside. Ben and I threw our shoulders against it. It was rusted shut. "It's not moving!" I screamed. Scrape. Thump. It was in the room with us. I turned, my flashlight beam shaking. The creature was standing right where the lantern had been. It was massive, filling the space. I could smell it now. The blood smell was overwhelming, mixed with the stench of decay. "Get behind me!" Kevin yelled, and he did the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. He charged it. He ran straight at the shadow, holding his camera up like a shield, its light shining right on the thing. "Get out!" he roared. The shadow didn't move. It just opened. A gash of what looked like pure, swirling static opened in its chest, and then a voice came out of it. Not a whisper, not a radio voice. A sound that was a dozen voices at once, all screaming, "We are starving." The sound hit us like a physical blow. It was so loud, so full of rage and pain, that it threw me off my feet. Ben collapsed, holding his ears. Kevin, who was closest, was lifted off the ground and thrown backward, slamming into the steel door. He didn't get up. The creature, the shadow, it turned its head toward me. It took a slow, scraping step. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I just stared at it, my flashlight beam illuminating the swirling static in its center. And then, a new voice. From the spirit box, which was still on, lying on the floor. A little girl's voice. "Play?" The shadow creature stopped. It slowly turned its head toward the sound of the spirit box. The little girl's voice came again, playful. "Ball?" The creature hesitated. It seemed confused, and in that moment of hesitation, I heard Ben groan. I grabbed his arm. "Ben, get up! Get Kevin!" Ben scrambled over to Kevin, who was stirring. I kept my light trained on the shadow. It was still looking at the spirit box, as if trying to understand the child's voice. "Go," I whispered. "Go." Ben and I half-dragged, half-carried Kevin up the tunnel. We didn't look back. We just climbed, our feet slipping on the slick concrete, our lungs on fire. We could hear the spirit box behind us, still crackling. "Play, ball, play." We burst out of the door at the top of the chute, slamming it shut behind us. I fumbled with the deadbolt, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold it. I got it locked. For a second, there was silence. And then, from the other side of that solid steel door, whump. A heavy, wet, furious impact, like a body being thrown against it with impossible force. Whump, whump, whump. We ran. We didn't stop until we were in the parking lot, throwing our gear in the van. We drove off, leaving the main gate wide open. When we got back to the studio, we found the main camera file was corrupted, but the audio from Ben's recorder was crystal clear. You could hear me ask, "Who needs help?" You could hear the groan. You could hear the thud from the top of the tunnel. And then, in the silence right before the scrape started, you can hear a new voice, a clear, cold, female voice right next to the microphone. It says, "It's awake." Built in 1827, the Rolling Hills Asylum in East Bethany, New York, wasn't originally an asylum at all. It was the Genesee County Poor Farm. It was a place of last resort for the unwanted, orphans, widows, the mentally ill, and minor criminals. They weren't patients, they were inmates. Over 1,700 documented deaths occurred on the property, with hundreds of unclaimed bodies buried in unmarked graves in the field out back. Today, it's famous for its resident spirits. The most well-known is Roy, a man with gigantism who spent most of his life there. He's said to be a gentle giant, often seen as a hulking shadow over 7 feet tall. The building's owner has even recounted finding a rat killed with a giant bloody handprint on the wall, believing it was Roy protecting her. But not all the spirits are gentle. In the infirmary, people hear the cackling laugh of Nurse Emmy, a cruel nurse rumored to have practiced dark rituals. And the second-floor men's dormitory, dubbed the Shadow Hallway, is a hotspot for dark, crawling figures that dart across doorways. This is the true story of an investigator who met Roy and learned what he was protecting the living from. My name is Kyle. I don't investigate to debunk. I investigate to experience. And Rolling Hills has always been my holy grail. The stories about Roy, in particular, always fascinated me. Was he a guardian? A simple echo? I wanted to find out. I finally got to do an overnight lockdown with my friend and tech manager, Sam. Sam is the skeptic. He's there to find the rational explanation, which I respect. I'm the feeler. Sam's the one who points at a rattling pipe and says boiler, while I'm the one who feels the air get cold and says spirit. We made a good team. We arrived just as the sun was setting, painting the sky a sick, bruised purple over the flat New York farmland. The building itself is a monster of red brick and peeling white paint. It doesn't look like an asylum. It looks like a forgotten, oversized farmhouse, which somehow makes it creepier. The caretaker, a woman named Sharon, met us at the door. She was tough, no nonsense, and looked like she'd seen it all. "You've done this before, I take it?" she asked, handing us a set of keys and a map. "A few times," I said, trying to sound professional. "We're focusing on Roy and the shadow hallway tonight." Sharon's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Right. The hot spots. Well, you know the rules. Don't break anything, don't taunt anyone, and try not to get hurt. Roy, he's protective, but he's not always clear on who he's protecting or what he's protecting them from. Just be respectful. He's not a monster. He's just Roy." She locked the main door behind us. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was deafening. The building was ours until 6 a.m. The air inside was thick and smelled of mildew, rust, and something indescribably old. Not just dusty, old. Like the smell of a forgotten book, but for a building. "All right, where to first, boss?" Sam said, already setting up his main camera in the lobby. "Want to go talk to a mean old lady?" He meant Nurse Emmy. We started in the infirmary, a long tiled room that was noticeably colder than the lobby. The paint on the walls was peeling in long, leprous strips. "Nurse Emmy?" I called out into the dark, tiled room. "Are you here? We'd love to talk to you." The spirit box just hissed. The EMF meter stayed flat. "Nothing," Sam said, looking bored. "Just old pipes and dust." "Let's try the morgue," I said. "It's right next door." The morgue is intense. It's a small concrete room with 3 body drawers still in the wall. The air is cold and smells like iron and bleach. We did a 20-minute EVP session. "Is there anyone in here?" I asked. Silence. "Can you make a sound? Can you touch one of these tools?" Silence. Sam was starting to get visibly annoyed. "This is a bust, man," he said, packing up his camera gear. "This place is as dead as its occupants. We've been here an hour and gotten nothing but a spike from a fuse box. Let's just go." "No, wait," I said. "We haven't been to the shadow hallway. That's the main event. Let's give it an hour. If we get nothing, we can sleep in the car." Sam sighed, a big theatrical huff. "Fine. One more, Kyle. Then I'm out. I'm not sitting in the dark for 8 hours for nothing." We went up the wide, creaking central staircase to the second-floor men's dormitory, the shadow hallway. The moment we stepped onto the floor, the atmosphere changed. The air went from musty and old to electric. You could feel the static on your skin, raising the hairs on your arms. It was at least 15 degrees colder than the rest of the building. "Okay," Sam whispered, his tone suddenly serious. He stopped complaining. "I feel that." "Right?" I said, my own voice dropping to a whisper. "This is it." The hallway is long, maybe 100 feet, with identical doorways on either side, all of them gaping black rectangles. We set up an IR camera at the far end of the hall, pointing it down the long, dark corridor. This would be our master shot. We sat on the floor about halfway down with our backs to the wall, just watching the monitor. For an hour, nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that's so deep, you start to hear the blood pumping in your own ears. Sam was starting to nod off, his head lolling. I was staring at the monitor so hard my eyes were burning. "And then," Sam whispered, his voice sharp, "did you see that?" "See what?" I said, leaning into the monitor. My heart leaped. In the third doorway on the left, something just peeked out. I zoomed the camera in. The doorway was empty, just blackness. "I don't see anything, man. You're probably just seeing things." "No, I swear," he said, his voice urgent. It looked like a head. No body, just a head, and it was gone in a second. I was about to tell him he was crazy, that he was just tired and letting the place get to him. And then, on the monitor, a shape formed in the darkness of that exact doorway. It was blacker than the shadow it was in, a dense, crawling mass. It moved up the doorframe onto the ceiling and skittered down the hall, disappearing into another room. It moved like a human-sized spider, but it had too many limbs. It was fast, unnatural, and utterly silent. "My God," I whispered, my hands shaking. "Did you see its legs?" That was on the ceiling. Sam was already on his feet, throwing gear into his bag. He wasn't skeptical anymore. He was terrified. "We're leaving," he said, his voice a tight, panicked whisper. "That is not a ghost. That is not a spirit. I don't know what that is, but I'm not staying in this building with it." "Sam, wait. That's what we came for." "No! That's not what I came for. I came for is anyone here, not for that." That thing is not human. It's not right. We're going." He was genuinely terrified. He grabbed his bag and started speed walking for the exit. I wasn't going to let him go alone. I grabbed my camera and ran after him. "Sam, wait up. Slow down." He was already at the end of the hall, at the top of the main stairwell. "Kyle, let's go," he yelled, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. And then he stopped. He just froze. At the top of the stairs. His back was to me, but I could see every muscle in his shoulders tense up. He'd put one foot on the top step and just stopped. "Sam?" I said, my voice catching. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, perfectly still, staring down the staircase. "Sam, you're freaking me out. What do you see?" I jogged the last few feet. "Dude, what are you—" I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I felt my stomach drop to my feet. Standing at the bottom of the wide, grand stairwell looking up at us was a man. He was massive. He had to be over 7 feet tall, broad as a refrigerator, and he was just standing there. He was wearing what looked like old-fashioned, simple overalls and a plain shirt. He was just staring up at Sam. "That's Roy," I whispered. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't scared. Not of him. He felt sad. Incredibly, profoundly sad. He looked like a lost child. "Roy," I said, my voice shaking. "We're not here to hurt you. We're leaving. We're just passing through." Roy didn't move. He just tilted his head, his expression full of a deep, sorrowful confusion. And then, from the hallway behind us, the shadow hallway we'd just run from, we heard it. A dry, clicking, skittering sound. The shadow spider was coming. It had followed us. Roy heard it too. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. The sadness vanished, replaced by a cold, protective fury. He didn't look at us. He looked past us, at the dark hallway behind our backs. He raised one of his massive hands, a hand the size of a dinner plate, and he pointed, and then he screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was a roar, a deep, guttural, animalistic sound of pure, unadulterated rage that shook the entire building. The walls vibrated. The floorboards hummed under our feet. Dust fell from the ceiling in a shower. The skittering sound behind us stopped instantly. It was as if Roy's roar had been a physical wall. Roy roared again, louder this time, and he took one heavy, booming step up the stairs toward us. Sam and I didn't wait. We bolted. We practically jumped over the banister, ran past him, down the stairs, and out the front door, not even looking back. We got in the car. I was fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition. He saved us," Sam said, his voice breathless. "That thing in the hall, that f***ing thing. Roy was protecting us from it." We reviewed the footage later. The shadow creature was clear as day on the camera. A crawling mass was the only way to describe it. But when we got to the stairwell, there was nothing. Roy didn't show up on film. He was completely invisible. The only proof we had was the audio. You can hear me whisper, "That's Roy." You can hear his deafening, building-shaking roar. And then, you can hear my camera, which I'd left on in the hallway, capture the sound of that thing skittering away in a blind panic. When we were packing our gear in the car, the owner found us. She'd heard the roar from her office on the other side of the property. "You met Roy, huh?" she said, not even looking surprised. "He yelled at us," I said. "No," she said, shaking her head as she locked the main door. "He wasn't yelling at you. He's yelling for you. He keeps the other things in check. He's the guardian here." She then took us to the morgue, a room we had skipped. She shined her flashlight on a section of the plaster wall. "He left this for me a few years ago," she said. Pressed deep into the plaster was a handprint. It was massive, nearly a foot wide, the fingers thick as sausages. "That's Roy's," she said. "He's protective. You were lucky he was on your side tonight. Not everyone is."